welcome to the third concert of the KENWOOD Chamber Music Group series for 2020 and 21. Coming to you from Blue House Production Studio in Kensington. We're finally back to what we thought would be our home base for all the concerts. We've been very fortunate over the years in taking advantage of a wonderful local resource, the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. And tonight we're privileged to present two fine members of that orchestra. Violinist Ivan Stefanović hails from Belgrade and studied at the Cleveland School of Music. And he's a longtime member of the Baltimore Symphony and is currently associate principal second violinist of the symphony. And he's joined tonight by Sarah Fuller, who is the principal harp of the Baltimore Symphony. Sarah studied at the School of Music at Indiana University and the New England Conservatory. They've prepared a lovely program, starting with a piece that will be very familiar to our audience and proceeding to pieces by composers who are considerably less familiar. This should be a wonderful introduction to music we're probably not all that familiar with, and two brilliant performers.
Good evening. It's great to be in your living rooms, in your family rooms, in your kitchens, wherever you are. We're not judging. It's of course great to be there in this way. It's of course not so great that we're not all in a beautiful space together in person. But we'll pretend that we are. I think maybe I'm going to wait for the late seaters to come in and to find parking and all of that. We'll just imagine that that's happening, and still be together like this in this setting. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Mark. As Mark indicated, I have been in the Baltimore Symphony for a long time, over 30 years now. And I've been playing with Sarah in that orchestra you've been playing, what, about 14 years or so?
Yes.
So we are good friends, great colleagues. She's a great musician, and I love playing beautiful music with her. And we are presenting, I always think of programs as, when I compose a program, I always think that a program should resemble a menu in a 5-star Michelin restaurant, like you have many here in this, we have many here in this area. And that is exactly what we're presenting tonight. It's music from around the world, from Brazil, from Argentina, from France, from Spain by the way of France, and from our own United States. The aperitif in our menu that you just heard is the famous meditation. People always think of it as meditation. The full name is Meditation from Thais. And Thais is an opera that Jules Massenet, French composer, wrote in 1894. And this piece is an entr'acte, an intermezzo that was written to basically entertain the audience as the state change is happening, set change is happening on stage during the opera, to both entertain them and to provide further atmosphere for the piece. The opera itself is a kind of a religious love story is the best way I can describe it. There's a monk who is confronting Thais, the beautiful courtesan, hedonistic character apparently, and he's trying to persuade her to leave her life of luxury and pleasure and find salvation through God. So religious love story, I think. And it's interestingly marked actually andante religioso, which is something that composers often don't use. And of course, we get to interpret as we like, we the musicians. And that is, I think, a great way to start a meal. And next we will move on to some beautiful songs by Brazilian composer Heitor Villa-Lobos. He is the foremost Brazilian composer, extremely prolific composer, wrote over 2,000 works, died in 1959. And when I say songs, I just want to, the kids these days call everything a song. Even some of my students who are in the classical world, they will call a movement of a quartet a song because, of course, how they listen on Spotify and elsewhere.
Right.
But these are actual songs for voice. So that's you'll hear a little bit more about each one of them soon. His music was influenced by both Brazilian folk music and, of course, elements from the European classical tradition. He was born in Rio de Janeiro, and he had a bit of an interesting part of his life where it was around 1905. He started exploring Brazil's dark interior, as it was called. He was absorbing a native Brazilian music culture. And there are some tales that he told about a decade where he spent traveling on some expeditions. There is a kind of tall tale of his capture and near escape from cannibals. They're believed to be some fabrications of wild romanticism that he was going through. But after this period, he actually gave up an idea of any kind of conventional music training and just absorbed completely himself in a musical indigenous musical influences of Brazil and cultures, which are based, of course, on both Portuguese and African traditions. And of course, they have American Indian elements as well. He played with many local Brazilian street bands. He was very much influenced by the Brazilian cinema. And we're talking about, of course, tango influence, which you will later hear in Piazzola's work. And became a cellist in the Rio Opera Company. So quite a life he had. And Sarah will tell us about the first piece.
Sure. Just to sort of give you an interesting tidbit, the very first piece we played, the Massenet, and the piece we're about to play are actually the only two works on our program originally written for this combination, violin and harp. In the opera, obviously it's a full orchestra, but it's a very prominent harp part accompanying the violin. So,
As I understand, there are actually two harps. I didn't realize this. Yeah,
there are two harps. So it's a very full sound, and I think that's supposed to evoke the religiosity of it, the divine, if you will. And then the piece we're about to play, the Song of the Black Swan, it's originally for violin or cello and piano or harp. And in fact, Mark, if you would like to help me turn pages, I would be very grateful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
the next piece, the next song, is called Improviso. And so what I failed to mention earlier is Villa-Lobos' dad was a violinist. He admired him greatly, and we think that we are of the opinion that this is easily something that he wrote for him.
Yes.
And this was an early piece of Villa-Lobos.
We will now depart from music that was originally written for instruments, and we are going to go to the human instrument, some vocal pieces. Villa-Lobos was very into music of the people, street music, folk music. And we will be playing for you different dance styles that originally came from Portugal, and when they came to Brazil, they kind of took on a life of their own. They incorporated Afro-Caribbean beats, and they really kind of became their own animal. The very first song that we will play for you is, and pardon me, my Portuguese pronunciation, please forgive me for those of you who speak perfect Portuguese. It's called Modinha. And a Modinha is sort of a diminutive form of mode or style. And it is a term for a sentimental song, a love song, A lot of I will be reading the poetry to you of the vocal line that Ivan will be interpreting so beautifully on the violin. And in this first poem from Modinha, I will read you the lyrics. In the solitude of my gray days, I die, my love, of your great disaffection. And though indeed you do despise me, yet will I love you all the time, although to you so far removed, never comes the sad song of the troubadour. Joyful I wish you be, yet if someday that happiness gets changed into pain, then would you hear from the past my plaintive tones, telling again the gentle, dismal words of my true love. So very much heart on the sleeve, love song. Oops, pardon me. The next song that we will play for you is another form of a Modinha, and it is called The Song of the Sailor, in translation. And it's actually adapted from a very ancient, well, not ancient, but an old Portuguese poem from the 15th century. And the first stanza tells of an enamored young woman who has the good fortune to see her lover that day. And then the second stanza is that of three love-struck girls whom she's sharing her song. I think they all have sailors at sea that they are pining for and missing.
Age-old story.
Yes, exactly. Well, from that very heart-rending song to a little more comical subject matter. The next piece we're about to play is the lundu, which is sort of a dance style that, again, came over from Portugal, but really adapted a lot of Afro-Caribbean rhythms. The lundu of the Marquesa de Santos. And I actually have a picture of her here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well. She was a real person. Mm-hmm. Yes, very lovely. She was the mistress of the Marquis de Santos. And I have a little piece of history that I found that I'd like to read to you. In the second half of 2010, no less than 94 letters of the Emperor Pedro I to his celebrated mistress, Domatia de Castro, the Marquis de Santos, written between 1823 and 1827, were found almost by accident in an obscure museum in the United States, missing and forgotten. The author of this unparalleled discovery in our history attributes the find to the intervention of the Santa Domatia. This woman who this piece is written about, a lot of women refer to her as a saint. I'll explain why. Whose tomb in the cemetery of the Consolation is visited still today by young women who go there to pray to ask for a husband. Long before, however, Domatia de Castro, a divorced young woman from Sao Paulo, had a very profane involvement with the first emperor of Brazil. And this forbidden romance was a great scandal in her time in Europe. He was not only content to bring his Sao Paulo lover to the court in Rio de Janeiro, to name her the Marquise, and to make her the maidservant of the good empress, Leopoldina. Dom Pedro also had her children raised with Domatia alongside their legitimate half-brothers. This noisy extramarital adventure, which is the great novel of our history, was recorded in part in these letters that the emperor wrote as himself the demon. And she is Titilia. So I will read you this poem. My idolized flower, everything in me is black and sad. Leave my soul shattered, O Titilia, since the day you left. This tremendous punishment already my soul cannot resist. Ah, I am dying, dying since the day you left. This punishment is tremendous, tremendous. So it is a very sort of over-the-top love story to a somewhat comical figure that I believe the Brazilians raised their eyebrows at historically. So, on to some more minor key, heart-rending music. The next song that we will be playing for you is quite beautiful. It is called Nesta Rua. And I will read you the poem. Nesta Rua means on this street. On this street, there are woods named Solitude. Within them lives an angel who stole my heart. If I stole your heart, you might have stolen mine as well. If I stole your heart, it is because I love you. Simple, sweet, perfect.
Have to catch our breaths, I think, after such passionate music. We have two more composers on our program, on our menu tonight. The next one is a Spanish piece by French composer Maurice Ravel. And that is not an unusual thing. Some of the, I hate to say this, but some of the best Spanish music was actually written by French composers. For Ravel, or in general, for French composers, fascination with Spanish music goes back to, of course, Bizet's Carmen, Lalo's Symphonie Espagnole for violin and orchestra, and it was explored by Chabrier, by Debussy, and of course by Ravel. But Ravel's connection to Spanish music was really more of a matter of heritage. His mother was of Basque descent and grew up in Madrid, which is actually where my older sister lives now. And she often sang to him folk songs as a child. And this piece, the Habanera, which we're going to play, he chose it as the Spanish influence of this piece actually has origins in France itself. The Habanera rhythm is presented throughout the piece by the harp. You will recognize it. It's one of those things that you know what it is, but you don't know until you hear it. It was originally composed for bass voice and piano in 1907, and it was entitled Vocalise étude en forme de habanera. So étude, vocal étude in the form of a habanera. It was really meant to be as an exercise, believe it or not, for as an étude for
Really?
singers. Yes.
Wow.
It was actually very difficult to execute, to sing. And he later transcribed it for cello and piano and retained some of the virtuosity of the voice. But it's actually, I think, a lot easier for us to play it. And then later it survives in several other arrangements for different instruments.
I had 2 pages stick together on me there. Sorry about that. I caught you though.
Nice.
Okay. Well,
I said 2 more. It was actually 3 more.
ah,
I didn't mention the. Yeah, I didn't think about it still.
yes. Well, we're going to travel back to our home country, America. And we wanted to incorporate this piece. I discovered it this summer. I wanted to include a composer of color, and William Grant Still is just such a master of color. I actually think it's very fitting to put him next to Ravel, because I hear a lot of Ravel's harmonies, Debussy's harmonies, in a lot of his work. This piece is an adaptation of a piano work. It is the middle movement of a piece he wrote called Three Visions. The middle movement is entitled Summerland. And the Summerland, it was believed, was he was a very spiritual person. He believed in reincarnation. He believed in seances and mediums. But it was believed that when the human soul left the body, it went to a place of judgment. And if it was deemed that you lived a good life, you would go on to your final destination, which was the Summerland.
I thought you were going to say the studio.
The studio, yes, indeed. And in fact, this was a very beloved and popular belief amongst African Americans at the time, because it was an unracial ability to transcend, to the soul to go on to this idea of essentially a form of heaven. And yes, I just think it lends itself so beautifully. I did not arrange the violin part, but I did take the piano part and turn it into a harp part. So.
Glad you did.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me get my pages in order this time. Make sure nothing sticks.
And the last on our program tonight is our three tangos from Astor Piazzola's History of Tango. These are very well-known compositions originally written for flute and guitar in 1986. It's often played in very different in various combinations. Violin can be substituted for flute, harp for marimba, and guitar, and many people want to play it because it's such beautiful music. It was Piazzola's mission, if you will, to bring the tango, the music of tango from the bordellos and dance halls of Argentina into the concert halls of Europe and America. And so he was obviously influenced in his home country of Argentina by what he was hearing, but he, as many composers, traveled to Paris to the famous kind of mother teacher of many famous composers, Nadia Boulanger, who, of course, gave him the education of European tradition in composing, but she also encouraged him not to become another European-style composers, but to really apply these to apply the tango tradition to the lessons that she had taught him, and he took that to heart. He also lived. His parents lived actually in. I think it's Brooklyn in New York, and he went into some jazz clubs and snuck through the back door and listened and absorbed actually some of the jazz traditions as well. So these are four movements named in titles and also in years, because of course we're going through the history of the dance. Bordello 1900 is the first one. I think let me just speak about all of them and we can just play them.
Sure.
So tango originated in Buenos Aires in 1882. It was first played on guitar and flute, and then later it was arranged for many other instruments. This Bordello movement paints a picture, of course, of, as you can imagine, a somewhat chaotic and fun and crazy scene with French, Italian, and Spanish women who are teasing policemen and thieves and sailors and riffraff and everybody else. So it's a very high-spirited tango. The second movement, Café, 1930, possibly one of our favorite things to play of all music. So 1930, what happened then is people stopped or didn't dance the tango quite as much as they did in 1900. They preferred then they started liking to listen to it more as a composition in a recital, in a concert,
Sort of
or in a cafe.
elevated.
Or in a cafe, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So it had more melancholy harmonies. This is a slower piece. Tango was also starting to be sung in this period of history. And then the third one is Nightclub 1960. This is a time with much more international exchange, much more traveling. Tango is evolving. Brazil and Argentina come together in Buenos Aires. So bossa nova and tango are kind of dancing together, if you will. And so this is yet another part of the evolution. There is a fourth movement called Concert d'aujourd'hui, or modern day concert, which is a movement in which tango almost loses itself in a way. We just chose not to bring that to you tonight, but this is the history of tango as we go through the ages.
you would like to take a seat.
Thank you. Well, thank you for a fantastic concert. That was just wonderful.
Thank you.
Uh,
Good play.
And we would, of course, have enthusiastic applause, and then we would be able, in our typical setting, offer you wine and dessert.
Oh,
And
Great.
nice reward, but
and our audience would have an opportunity to get to know you and ask you questions. But we're in a different context, so I have to be the substitute for that. So we have just a short Q&A period.
absolutely.
Sarah, tell us a little bit about your instrument. What are the major elements of it?
Well-
It's really, it's gorgeous.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do my best to sort of allow you to see my instrument a little bit. So this is a concert grand harp. This particular model is probably the one you'll see in most symphony orchestras. There are two major harp makers in the world. There are more than two, but I'm just going to highlight the two. One is American, and it is the Lion and Healy Harp Company. They're based in Chicago, and that's where this guy is from. And the other is Salvi in Italy. And for a period of time, they were actually owned by the same people, and then they split up again. But anyhow, American players tend to really like the American harp because it's a very big, warm, large-sounding instrument that really cuts through an orchestra. So this is why you will see this particular model, which is a Style 23. The harp has 47 strings most of the time, and 7 very pesky pedals. And shame on me for picking chromatic piano music to try to adapt for the harp, because I don't know if you could see, but there's a lot of fancy footwork going on when we have lots of sharps and flats. When I depress a pedal, there are actually 3 notches for a pedal. So this happens to be the C pedal. The C strings are all the red ones. They're tuned diatonically like the white keys on a piano. Every single string has 3 pitch possibilities. So when I play middle C, I can also play C flat, C natural, C sharp on the same string just by moving my feet. It makes for really cool things that no other instrument can really do, which are beautiful glissandos, where you get to pick and choose what pitches you want and what you don't. But it also makes some chromatic things very difficult. And finally, I'll just give you a little history lesson. This is called a triple action harp, or excuse me, a double action harp. Triple doesn't exist. And
Except for when you play.
yes, exactly. That's right. They need a new notch. But these were developed in sort of the early mid 1800s. And if you notice in symphony orchestra music, sort of Baroque, early classical didn't really have a whole lot of harp because there was so much chromaticism going on in music at the time, but the harps couldn't match it. They couldn't change keys. They really just weren't able to play in symphony. So when this was developed, all of a sudden composers were very interested in writing for it. The French especially just went wild for it. And so that's why Debussy and Ravel, if you think of harp music and classical music, you think of sort of these very dreamy glissandi, and it's because they learned early on how to write for the instrument. And the rest is history. They're the reason why I have a job with the Baltimore Symphony. So I hope that helped and answered the question a little bit.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
good.
very interesting. Yvonne, tell us a little bit about your violin.
Yes, well, first of all, I also have 2 pedals I just want to point out.
Oh, 2.
But they do
Very-
nothing for my violin. They
very
do
good.
turn my pages. And I didn't used to use pedals. So this is a beautiful instrument made by French maker Nicolas Lupot, L-U-P-O-T, in 1860. There is a more famous French violin maker by the name of Violin, which, if anyone knows anything about French violin makers, usually they know about him. But from what I understand, the reason he's better known is mostly because he was better at selling himself and marketing himself. Lupo was the one that was actually considered the French Stradivari. And he's famous for making, first of all, instruments with this very beautiful red coloring, as you see in the varnish, which is just absolutely gorgeous. And also the depth of the lower strings, the G and D strings, it's like a Grand Canyon. I mean, it's so beautiful to play on, and there's so many different color possibilities. And this is an extremely valuable instrument, which I'm not lucky enough to own, but I'm lucky enough to play. It belongs to our music director, Marin Alsop. Used to belong to her. It belonged to her late father. And he was a collector and a player and a violinist in New York. And when he passed away, she many of these beautiful instruments came into her possession, and she was gracious and nice enough to let several of us in the orchestra keep playing these instruments. Instruments don't necessarily lose their monetary value, actually probably lose less of their monetary value as they're just sitting somewhere and not being touched and handled, but they lose their playing value. An instrument made out of wood has to breathe, has to vibrate, which is why a brand new instrument takes months, years, decades, and maybe even centuries sometimes to reach its full potential, because it's many thousands and thousands of hours of the instrument vibrating, of that glue being, being energized by the sound for it to all sound as good as this does.
Let me ask both of you, how did you happen to come to the instruments you've ended up playing for a career?
I am from Philadelphia originally, and Philadelphia has an incredible music school called the Settlement Music School. There's many branches around the city, and they make music lessons available to people of all economic backgrounds, most of their student bodies on scholarship. So I started taking little baby music classes, little Orff classes, where we had tambourines and sang songs and really learned things by ear. And then my parents got me a little tiny Casio keyboard, and I used to sit there and I'd think, these notes go together and these notes don't go together, and I'd sit there and compose, and I got really into it and took piano lessons. And then a year later we were in line paying for piano classes. I think I was 5 or 6 years old, and I had just gone to the ballet with my mother. She was really great about bringing me to all kinds of performances, and I said, Mom, can I take harp lessons? And she happened to be talking to the director of the school at the time, and she was like, oh no, I don't think so. And the director piped up and said, actually, Mrs. Fuller, we have a wonderful harp teacher, and she's a graduate of the Curtis Institute in Philly, and all she has to do is find a small harp to rent, and it's the same price as piano lessons. And about a year later, we got our hands on a very tiny version of this. And a year after that, I got a full-size pedal harp because I grew really quickly. So that's my story. I was about 8 when I really started playing. So.
Well, I started. I was, I think, around 5 years old. My older sister had already started playing cello, and she has a much better story than I do. She saw this painting of drawing of a relative of ours. It was mostly his upper torso and head, and there was a scroll of a string instrument visible in the picture, in the painting, and she asked our mom what that was, and she said it was a cello. But even if that hadn't happened, I think all 3 of us, I have a younger sister who's a pianist, all 3 of us would have ended up playing an instrument, because my mom at the time before she had us kids, was a singer, a solo singer in a choir, in a well-known Yugoslav choir. She actually toured the United States with a choir when she was 16. And so she grew up with music. My dad grew up just having learned piano, just having had some piano lessons. That was just part of the tradition back in that part of the world, if you could get teachers. And so they both, definitely music was part of their lives, and my mom just insisted that all 3 of us would have to play an instrument. So I have violin. Like I said, I have a cello and a piano playing sister, and we live in Baltimore, Madrid, and Berlin, and never get together to play this beautiful piano trio music that we could, because we have children and careers and orchestras and tours and all this and schedules. But still, it's great to have that.
Let me ask you, your program I thought was really wonderful, because you introduced us to music we don't ordinarily hear in the concert hall. In terms of technique and playing that music, I know that the classical training must be very valuable, but are there techniques you need to use to play this kind of music that you don't learn in a classical training?
Were you ever taught how to bang on a harp? I don't know.
Well, it's funny you
It
should
is part
say
of-
that. In the early 20th century, composers were starting to think about all the different sonic possibilities. It's not just plucking the strings, but we basically have a drum down here. And the 21st century composers are writing wild stuff, like plucking all of the little strings up here, or making thunder effects with the low strings. Anyhow, so I was taught after my basic training how to break the rules, so to speak. But since I was adapting in this program a lot of music, either from the piano or even from guitar, I was really sonically thinking I still wanted to stay true to that sound world. So I played lower on the strings in the Piazzola piece to sort of imitate a guitar when I could. So, yes, you learn the rules in school and then you learn to break them.
That's right. Well, for me, there is really nothing that I did today that is not already, it has been for decades at least, part of violin techniques. We use these harmonics, whistling type sounds. We sometimes play close to the bridge to make more of a glassy sound. The one thing that I did that was maybe more unusual than others, than these other techniques, was this kind of a sound, right? It sounds like a really bad old closet door, and that is to imitate the, what is the name of the instrument now?
Well, it sounds like the güiro.
Güiro, yes, that's right. Which is an instrument with wood notches on top of a wooden stick, I think it is, that then also get played with another stick, and it makes that kind of a sound. So that's what that's supposed to be, and that was maybe the most unusual, I would say, of the techniques I used.
And you sound also just like a singer in all of those Villa-Lobos
thank you.
pieces. So your mother would be proud.
Thank you.
We'd, I think, love to hear music like this made more a part of the concert repertoire. Double-barreled question. Do you see music by Latin American composers, South American composers coming more into the repertoire that major orchestras are playing? After all, the music director of one of our great orchestras is a young man from Venezuela. We hear the great orchestras of young people from Venezuela. Is this catching on in programs?
Well, I wouldn't say it's that unusual, actually. We're luckily, happily past, your standard, Mozart overture and Tchaikovsky violin concerto and a Brahms symphony kind of menu for concerts. We've come past that. We've gone past that a long time ago, actually. So yes, Villa-Lobos is often you will see his music in orchestral settings.
The Bachianas Brasileiros.
Bachianas Brasileiros, of course.
Kiri Takanoa took that to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Piazzola, we have done many times his Four Seasons
Oh, yes.
which is, our concertmasters play that quite it's often paired with Vivaldi's Four Seasons, which is a great pairing to go back and forth between the two eras, right? So all of that. More importantly than that, rather than, looking further to explore the music of South America and Europe and even the Asian countries, what we're coming around to now, fortunately, is recognizing that music by Black composers has not been played nearly as much as anything else that we've played. Of course, music by white composers. And the volume, the opus of Black composers is vast, it's varied, it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's an absolute shame that for so long we did not do this. And now every orchestra, every musician, every artist is realizing the lack of that representation, and we have yet to. We have that much more music to explore, which is wonderful, and do right by these amazing musicians.
Yeah. And this year, the BSO has actually gotten to record several pieces by people of color, and we just actually released the Denzone number 2. This week. I don't know if you played
I
that.
haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Yeah. So yeah, I think things are changing.
And just not to put an advertisement for what we're doing, but since you're asking, I mean, we are in this weird time of the pandemic, putting out a different program every single week on Wednesday nights. It's called BSO Sessions. We're recording them every week, and they are very similar to this concept of a shorter concert, about 50 minutes to an hour or so, and there is it's not long symphonies kind of a program. It's different composers. There's talking about composers, talking about artists, talking about context. It's a wonderful series. It's very inexpensive. Very approachable. So it's called BSO Sessions, and I encourage anyone to tap into that.
And I think the beauty of it at this time, since we are forced to play in smaller groups, we're actually discovering these hidden gems that haven't really made it to the concert hall in many years because all the big standards have been taking precedence. So we played a lot of music that I've never seen or heard of this year, which is a lot of fun.
And to access those programs that you were talking about, Yvonne, you just go to the Baltimore Symphony website?
BaltimoreSymphony.org website, and it's called Sessions. It's right up front there, and it's a very quick, easy sign up. They're only $10 a piece, and $20 for the week, for the month. So you get a great bargain just getting $20 for the month, 4 times a week. Incredible, music that you can watch from your, like I said, kitchen if you want.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been a fabulous concert.
Thank you.
I very much appreciate your sharing your artistry with us.
Very happy to. Thank you for having us.
Hopefully we'll get to do it for live audiences.
Yes,
in a few months' time.
we will look forward to when we can do it in person.
Absolutely.
For our audience, our next concert will be 4 weeks from tonight, March 21st, and we look forward to seeing you at that time. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.